Okay, so getting back into Donny Cates' Hulk run, right? Picking up where we left off, and we'll kind of explain what's going on to a degree as we go through this, as we usually do, just because of the fact that we're doing these like a month apart. We basically pick up in this alternate universe with this alternate reality version of Bruce Banner, and we pick up with this alternate reality version of General Thunderbolt Ross. Now, there is this really amazing monologue that that Banner does, like the main Marvel Universe Banner, the Incredible Hulk does, as all this is happening. Because remember, he's basically fighting this alternate reality version of Spider-Man, who was also exposed to gamma radiation, so like Spider-Hulk, essentially. And what he says here is, he says he wanted to be so much more than this, right? He wanted to push the boundaries, explore the unknowable, that he wanted to discover and invent, to create. Instead, on this world, every world that has ever known the name Bruce Banner, the story is always the same. Like this alternate me, the Banner of this world once said, "I am become death, again and again and again, the destroyer of worlds." Now, I love that quote. I don't know how many of you guys know where that's from, but it actually comes from a Hindu scripture. But it really became a staple of pop culture because of Robert Oppenheimer. After the detonation of the atomic bomb, when it was experimented, witnessing the first detonation in 1945 after the Manhattan Project, he said, "I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, 'Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.'" I absolutely love that quote. I've always loved that quote, right? It's just one of my absolute favorite quotes when it comes to the history, just in general, right? It's an amazing quote. But nonetheless, right, this alternate reality version of Bruce is basically being pummeled by Thunderbolt Ross. Now remember, they kind of work together to a degree, right? That Ross, seemingly in this universe and virtually every other, has never really liked Bruce Banner. But the I guess maybe alliance between the two, despite it being tenuous, was predicated on the idea that in the attempt of this alternate reality version of Banner to solve the bio-waste problem and accidentally creating all these different versions of Hulks, essentially, some of whom are grotesquely mutated, others are relatively normal in terms of their appearance, that in order to correct this mistake, they would basically send them through a wormhole, and who knows where they would go. Now, one of the things Donny Cates tells us is that ultimately we'll find out where they go to. We'll find out where it is that they all end up at. But regardless, it's just this really cool moment, because what Ross wants here in basically pummeling this alternate reality version of Banner is he wants to know what this Hulk is, where it came from, and how to kill it. And that's the crazy thing, is because this version of Hulk, this alternate reality Hulk, represents this huge threat to this alternate version of Thunderbolt Ross, because it could destabilize everything he's built. Now remember, in terms of how the Incredible Hulk operates right now, it's the Incredible Hulk's strength that is basically motivated by the Incredible Hulk itself. That what you have here is you have Banner, who controls the mind of the Incredible Hulk, and that he basically forces the Incredible Hulk's psyche to face off against all these different threats. And as you guys know, the longer a fight goes on for, and the more difficult it becomes for the Incredible Hulk to defeat a foe, the angrier the Incredible Hulk becomes. And the angrier the Hulk becomes, the stronger he becomes. So quite literally, Bruce Banner has turned the Incredible Hulk persona into a source of power that he can manipulate, right? He can literally ramp it up by stages, ramp it down by stages, have him face off against all kinds of credible threats. And so the result of this is right now, they're at stage 4. Basically, the Incredible Hulk persona is fighting Marvel zombies in his own mind. And because the Incredible Hulk cannot differentiate, right? It's basically a child. It doesn't know that what it's seeing is not real. It thinks it is. And so it's just pummeling everything it sees. And as the fight continues to go on, the Incredible Hulk persona gets angrier and angrier and gets stronger and stronger. And so because of this, again, Betty Ross has intermittently kind of appeared in the mind of Banner and just kind of talked to him occasionally. And one of the things that she says is she asks, like, "What are you doing?" Right? Like, you're not going to kill that poor thing. And the response of Banner is, "I mean, like, what are you talking about?" And the answer that Betty offers is, like, he's just a child, right? He can't help what he is. And that's when Banner gets a little irritated and is just kind of like, what is this, right? Since when do you care so much about protecting these supposed children? Why is this so important to you? And that's when Betty's like, "Bruce, I don't exist, right? I'm a manifestation of your own mind." But she says, "I know what happens when you lock a child away and abuse it, when you take its freedoms away, its agency. It bottles all of that up, right? All of that fury, all of that rage. When you do that, Bruce, the child turns into what made it. You know this better than anyone. You were turned into what you are by your father, right? Like, you hurt people. You did bad things to people, right? Like, the Incredible Hulk persona is a manifestation of the abuse you experienced at the hands of your father, right? Rage given a physical form." And she says, "Now you have to ask yourself, if you lock the Hulk away and you keep hurting it, keep making it angrier, making it bottle up all of that rage. When that child explodes, what will he turn into? And the response of Banner is, I don't know, but let's find out. And that's when he ramps it up to stage 5 in order to defeat this, mutated version of Spider-Man. And at this point, now it's fighting gods. It's fighting Surtur and like Thor and Beta Ray Bill and like Loki and all these people, which again makes the Hulk angrier and angrier. Now the Hulk is able to overcome this mutated Spider Hulk. He's able to overcome him, but at that point, or at least kind of get the fight to the point where Spider Hulk is on the ropes. But what you do here is you basically switch over to this alternate reality version of Banner, and it says like, I tried to tell you everything, right? I've told you everything I know, right? Like there's no conceivable way that I know of to kill this version of the Incredible Hulk, and that's when you end up having Thunderbolt Ross, who lays his chips on the table, right? He tells the guys to leave, and he basically reveals his hand. And what he says here is that in reality, at the end of the day, when it came to like all these different versions of the Hulk that this alternate reality version of Banner had accidentally created, that General Thunderbolt Ross wasn't just getting rid of them indiscriminately, that what he was doing was actually weaponizing them, that the ones who were weaker, the ones who couldn't serve a useful purpose, they were all discarded. They were sent through the portal to end up wherever it was that they ended up at. But the reality is the ones who were stronger, the ones who could be used for warfare, right, that they were kept. And in fact, Reed Richards in this alternate universe had actually made it possible for Thunderbolt Ross to essentially control these versions of the Hulk. And then in turn, they've used them to fight wars, right? That one of the things that Thunderbolt Ross has said is that he had to use, ordnance that's the equivalent to the GDP of multiple nations that have been conscripted or taken over by the US. So what this means, or what this seems to indicate, is that the geopolitical landscape is not the way that it is in the main Marvel universe. It's not the United States of America, Canada, Mexico, Russia, any of the number of countries that are in Europe, right, China, that instead things seem to have changed drastically. And we don't necessarily know what continents or what nations the United States has taken over, but the United States has taken over a lot of them, right? They seem to control a huge part of the world. And the Incredible Hulks that were basically being taken by Thunderbolt Ross, that had accidentally been created by Banner, they were instrumental in making that happen. And so while it's not necessarily the fault of Banner, Thunderbolt Ross plays it off by saying, in a way, it is. Like, like all these Incredible Hulks, they were an accident created by you. It wasn't your intention. You were just trying to solve the bio-waste problem, but you literally gave us weapons. And while I never told you before, I used them to win wars, right? I just kind of kept it hidden from you. And so that's the crazy thing, is because what happens is that in the middle of all this, you have the fight going on between Hulk and Spider Hulk in the actual real world, right? That's where that fight is taking place. But the reality is all these bombs are dropped by Thunderbolt Ross, right? And when that happens, it's not enough to kill Spider Hulk or anything, but it's certainly enough to basically destroy the visor of Banner. And when that happens, like Banner is like literally the whole thing goes nuts, right? Like Banner's just kind of blown out of his seat and all that kind of stuff. And while it is a little weird because Banner is supposed, like this is the physical body of the Hulk, so it's basically the psyche of Banner, the psyche of the Incredible Hulk, basically, kind of operating inside this body, that Banner is actually overtaken by the psyche of Betty Ross. That the kind of physical representation we get here, at least as far as we can tell, is basically Banner just kind of being thrown out there. It's not really Banner being thrown into the physical real world. Instead, what it is it's actually Banner just being thrown out of control, right? That basically Betty Ross is taking over. That's kind of how that works, right? So those of you guys who are watching like Moon Knight right now, for example, you know how like the minds switch between like Steve Grant and Mark Spector? This is the equivalent of when like Mark Spector takes over and Steve Grant ends up going back there. But instead of Steve Grant like relinquishing control, Mark Spector just takes control. That's basically how this is working right now, to give you guys a better understanding of what's going on. Because I know that like on the surface, just looking at it, it's like, wait a minute, okay, so like does Banner physically exist? No, it's basically just the Betty Ross persona taking over the body of the Incredible Hulk and forcing the Bruce Banner persona into the background, right? And so because of this, what you also end up learning here is that this isn't actually Betty Ross. It looks like it's Betty Ross, but it's not actually Betty Ross, right? One of the things she says is that where Banner's begging, right? Like, you have to help me here. The response she gives is like, look at you, right? Helpless, trapped at the mercy of forces and violence out of your control. Remind you of anybody. And ultimately she says, you never really listen, do you, right? I told you, Bruce, Betty isn't real. Betty's not here. And what she does is she ramps the engine up and basically takes it to stage 6. And so now you have the Incredible Hulk persona facing off against demons, Mephisto, Dormammu, right? All these different guys. Now, here's kind of a funny caveat to this, right? Here's something that you may not have noticed. One of the things that Donny Cates is doing is giving us a hierarchy of power in Marvel Comics. It's very easy to miss. It's very easy to not notice, but he's giving us a hierarchy hierarchy of power. That in essence, you have stage 1, which is kind of a relatively small threat. But as the stages go up, the beings become more powerful. It wouldn't really make any sense to ramp the Incredible Hulk up to stage 6 and then like, here comes the Red Skull. It wouldn't really make any sense to do that. And so Donny Cates is in effect giving us a hierarchy of power in the Marvel universe. I can guarantee you, people are going to reference this, right? You go and you look at like battle forms and different things like that, or you ask people, you know, in different forms, like who's more powerful, you know, like Odin or like Dormammu, right? People are going to be like, well, I mean, according to Donny Cates's, Hulk run, it looks like it's Dormammu because Dormammu was a stage 6 villain or a stage 6 power, and Odin was stage 5, and that kind of a thing, right? But it's a cool little aside here. It's a smart little thing. And so in the end, one of the things that happens is that General Thunderbolt Ross reveals to Bruce Banner, this alternate version of Bruce, that these bombs that he dropped are not bombs in the traditional sense. Instead, what they are here are basically a means of mutation. That what's happening is that inside each one of these canisters are basically people that had been mutated, even though unintentionally, by Banner, but the ones that Thunderbolt Ross had kept. And that these, as Thunderbolt Ross refers to them, are basically just like abominations, right? Kind of like this alternate reality version of Abomination here. And so it's nuts because these things are massive in size, right? They're absolutely huge in size. And so of course this basically leads to Betty completely taking over the body of the Incredible Hulk, completely pushing Banner's persona out of the way. But in doing so, she says, "But I'm proud of you, son." And that's where it seems to hit at this idea that this is potentially Brian Banner. Now, this is where things get a little murky, because in Al Ewing's run, one of the things to remember in the Immortal Hulk is that it wasn't necessarily Brian Banner. It kind of was, but it was basically Brian Banner's spirit or essence that had been overtaken by the One Below All and used to torment the Incredible Hulk. That's what that was. It wasn't actually Brian Banner himself. And so what this does is it builds on what we've seen both in Al Ewing's runs, a lot of runs that came before it, Bill Mantlo, Peter David, where basically the Brian Banner persona is kind of the controlling aspect. Now, that's me guessing here, right? Just going on what's sort of happening in terms of words, that Brian Banner is the source of Bruce Banner's torment and seemingly the most powerful entity in his mind, the one thing that Banner just can't seem to overcome. But I could be entirely wrong here. This could very well be the mental persona of the Titan Hulk, right? Like, we don't know. We won't know until we get to the next issue. But ultimately, that this persona ends up ramping everything up, right? Like right past stage 7 and right past stage 8 all the way to stage 9, which is basically just who really even knows what this stage looks like. Presumably it's the Titan Hulk. But whatever it is, it literally leads to the Incredible Hulk just absolutely losing it and annihilating all these different abomination forces that are out there. And that's where it ends. So presumably this is where Titan Hulk comes into play. And if it does, I can't wait to see how this plays out. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.